You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, Ashley Hardgrave, and George Cedarquist. All right, this week, a field report from the New Opera Dialogues Convention with free throws from some of this year's panelists, including, but not limited to, composer Kevin Putz, librettist Mark Campbell, and singer-composer Diana Syrse. And then, as 2025 reaches its final inning, the team drafts their own best-of lists in what will go down in history as one hell of a year, in opera, that is. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, Christine Goerke takes flight, Riccardo Chailly takes a break, and Jose Cura takes a stand. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow on Apple Podcasts. Hit the plus sign. You can also stream episodes of OBS every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central at amplisoundsradio.com. Email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot take. And without further ado, I look across at a sea of faces. Everybody's here, even George, in a pre-recorded format. Let's start with Oliver Camacho. How's it going?
I'm not going to lie. I think I speak for a lot of professional singers when I say that I'm grouchy and I'm tired. Most people are, celebrating the holidays and eating their stollen and, snuggling up with a cup of hot cocoa next to the tree. I'm on the road, carrying my tuxedo. I keep breaking my tuxedo hanger, and my shoe polish is all dried out, and so I have
stolen is stale.
Stale. But what's adding to the grouchiness, I have to say, is that the Netflix series Boots was just canceled. I think that announcement came out today. And it was critically acclaimed and audiences loved it. It's about being gay in the Marines in the 90s. And I think Netflix is really testing to see if their audiences won't boycott them.
Or they're trying to get a merger approved. One of the two.
Yeah.
Funny how that works. That was Matt Cummings. What boots are you concerned with these days, or stolen for that matter?
I am mostly just concerned with my boots walking over the finish line of this year, because Lordy, it has been an odyssey. And I'm not talking about the upcoming Christopher Nolan movie.
Ashley Hardgrave, hit me with a reference that we'll all be impressed by, just like Matt.
Listen, I, too, am in the throes of holiday music making, but I have fully gone into delusional state because the Bears, once again, lead the NFC North at 10-4. They are almost certainly playoff bound. It's very, very exciting. And if you're a Chicago Bears fan, you know this doesn't happen very often, so we have to ride the wave. Meanwhile, it is a great time to be a professional athlete in your 40s. I'm not kidding, and I'm not just saying that because I too am in my 40s. Two magical stories that I'm going to tell you really quickly. The first is Lindsey Vonn. Lindsey Vonn, at 41 years old, just came out of retirement and delayed her retirement even further to win a World Cup in skiing at 41. I repeat, Lindsey Vonn is 41 and she just won the World Cup and she's headed to the Winter Olympics.
And her bones are all in one piece.
Or with titanium holding them together. Either way, she's doing great. Number two is Philip Rivers. I don't know if you guys know much about Philip Rivers. Philip Rivers is 44 years old. He's a retired NFL player. He is a father of 10. He just became a grandfather. And he just got signed as quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts because they have an entire roster of quarterbacks that have all gone down with injuries. And the Irsay sisters, who have taken over the Colts, who again are very unorthodox in their governance, and I'm here for it, they hired on Philip Rivers to go on as quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. He played his first game on Sunday as a 44-year-old quarterback. He threw his touchdown. It was incredible. It just is that beautiful reminder that it's never too late to go back and live your dreams. They also did a split screen between the high school football team that he coaches, watching him throw that touchdown. If you need something that's going to guarantee waterworks for your holiday season, just watch that clip over and over again. But yes, it's a good time to be a pro athlete in your 40s. And if you want to go do something, it's never too late.
Speaking of advanced age, Oliver Camacho. Oh, no, that's not what I was going to say. Speaking of advanced age, I did want to shout out the fact that this is our 499th episode, which is absolutely insane. Next week, we're going to be doing just a kind of a Christmassy episode, so we won't all be here in the same time to sort of celebrate it together. But I did want to point out that we couldn't do it without you, our listeners, or without Oliver's advanced age. 499 episodes is an incredible achievement, and we can give ourselves a little round of applause as we talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Hey, Opera Box Score fans. George Cedarquist here, executive producer of the show. I don't come back too often, but when I do, it has to be very, very important. And don't get me started on Michigan football right now. We're all just in a period of deep mourning. Instead, I want to celebrate with colleagues of mine who are part of New Opera Dialogues. New Opera Dialogues is an organization that connects artists, producers, and thinkers worldwide to reimagine opera for the 21st century. And through its annual dialogues and continuous exchange across artistic and institutional boundaries, NOD, or NOD, champions opera as a living, evolving art form with social and democratic relevance. This current meeting of New Opera Dialogues participants was presented in collaboration with YOST, the Yale Opera Studies Today program. And the NOD6 meeting was called Who's Calling the Shots? Aesthetics and Power in Contemporary Opera. Over 3 days of dialogues and listening sessions, artistic teams from North America and Europe discussed the evolving relationship between creative freedom and institutional expectation, and asked how opera can continue to function as a complex utopian force in an age that prizes simplification. New Opera Dialogues is run by a number of people. One of those people is the co-founder and chair, Dr. Amy Stebbins, who's a writer-director specializing in contemporary opera. Her works have been commissioned by the Bavarian State Opera, the Deutsche Oper Berlin, and the Munich Biennial. And along with Hauke Berheider, who you'll hear later on in the show with a few special guests, my conversation started with Amy. Amy Stebbins, thanks so much for being on Opera Box Score yet again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be back. It's been a while.
It has been a while. It's great to have you on the show again. So obviously I want to get into, what New Opera Dialogues is. But first of all, YOST, the Yale Opera Studies Today acronym. Let's figure out what that is first.
YOST is a group of scholars. It's a conference format based at Yale in the Department of Music, founded by Gundula Kreutzer. They have been looking at contemporary American opera as scholars, as musicologists who are interested in, assessing, investigating that scene, which, as you know, has been thriving for the past decade. And they've been very active in engaging artists in their conversations, bringing in, people like David T. Little, Missy Mazzoli, Ellen Reed into their conferences, and having those sort of contemporary artist voices. We're the other side of that initiative at New Opera Dialogues.
We being New Opera Dialogues, NOD. These acronyms they're crazy. So when I think about New Opera Dialogues, I think about conferences and pitches and panels, but that's not really what NOD is.
No. So YOST, for example, traditionally does conferences, and at New Opera Dialogues, we hold what we call dialogues. And the difference here with a dialogue is that if we think about academia, frequently academics scholars get their work together and then they bring it out to present it. And then the Q&A is kind of an opportunity for feedback to improve the work before it becomes a book or an article or something like this. And New Opera Dialogues is much more about having a conversation to serve our art form and to help us as artists, maybe with artistic questions that we're dealing with, or to help institutions serve the art form better. But if a conference is, let's say, an 80-20 relationship between presentation and Q&A, we're more a 20-80 proportion between a kind of statement or opening question and then a roundtable conversation around that issue that isn't really serving the individual who brings it, but much more raising an issue that's important to all of us and then discussing it. That is the dialogue that is at the heart of this whole initiative.
We've talked about Yost, we've talked about Nod, we've talked about you, but as I understand it, you're not the only one leading the charge and putting this whole thing together. Of course, Hauke Berheide, also a friend of Opera Box Score, is also part of the team.
Oh, Hauke is as much the generator of this organization as I am. This whole initiative grew out of our first collaboration in 2015-16 at the Bavarian State Opera. We were producing a world premiere in the context of their summer festival. And so I come from the United States, and that the scenes that we came from, the countries we came from, that there was really no exchange between artists happening, but there was also no shared knowledge. It was like reinventing the wheel on either side, and there was no knowledge exchange, and there was also no aesthetic exchange. We found there were a lot of kind of cliches that were still lingering from like the 70s and the 80s about what new European music sounds like or what new American music sounds like that were really out of date. You know, the film industry has international festivals where people gather and they watch work. We don't really have that in contemporary opera. And so we realized there was a need for, someone to help bridge these divides. And that's what we're trying to do. One dialogue at a time.
And that's the need that New Opera Dialogue serves, as opposed to the needs that, say, Opera America or Opera Europa would serve.
Absolutely. And even between Opera America and Opera Europa, there are important distinctions. Opera America has really had the mission to strengthen and nurture not only opera in the United States, but American opera, which has led them to serve artists in a way that's very different from Opera Europa, which is basically a management organization.
Let's go a little bit further then into this specific dialogue, NOD6, that was at Yale earlier in December. So what was the focus of it?
So we were actually planning to hold a dialogue we were trying to do one in Ukraine this year, in Western Ukraine. And that became challenging for a variety of reasons that you can imagine. The reason that we wanted to do that is we feel also as New Opera Dialogues, we serve a community of artists, and it's very important to us that we not only hold our events in places that's difficult for other people to get to, that we like normalize German and French locations and then we leave out people from other places. I mean, we do the best that we can in this. Or what became increasingly clear throughout the year was that the United States was in a totally a way I could never have imagined a decade ago, becoming a difficult place to have conversations in and to have art shown in. There was suddenly censorship happening and really big challenges for international conversations to happen there. And so we wanted to show solidarity with our American partners, our U.S. American partners. And so this is why we reached out to Gundel and said it needs to happen this year because the country's art scene is so under threat in its new opera. I mean, we've seen with the Kennedy Center, for example,
Right.
What's happened there. Like, it's real. It's now. We need to do something. To your question about the topic, that was exactly the topic that we wanted to focus on. Who is it who decides what new opera gets made, about what, and by whom? Is it the artistic manager? Is it the artistic director of an opera house? Is it the board who's putting up the money? And then what does this look like in other places like the United Kingdom, which is, going through a horrible situation with their arts funding right now. The institutions are falling apart. What's going on in Russia, where, as we know, there is a lot of political censorship? What's happening to our colleagues there? What's going on in Mexico, especially also in relationship to the United States. So it seems like the question of power, Political expression, free speech is something that is being threatened all over the world, and it's something that resonated absolutely with every single person at this dialogue.
Amy, the title of the dialogue was Who's Calling the Shots? Aesthetics and Power in Contemporary Opera. So my penultimate question for you is, who is calling the shots?
Not the artists. And that's something that we want to change.
We'll take a quick pause there in my interview with Amy before we get to that final tantalizing question that I'm going to pose for her and go back to Heike Berhardt, who I think name drops Wolfgang Riem at some point, which should make Weston happy. And of course, you'll hear from another list of attendees from NOD6.
I was amazed. I was kind of surprised to understand to which extent institutional representatives seem to be entirely ignorant of the aesthetic impact of their decision making. Giving or denying a commission defines what the art form is, whereas they, and this seemed to be true on both sides of the Atlantic, seem to believe that opera would just develop independently, like a wild plant, just growing and growing, and it was their only obligation to decide which part of that funny plant they would present to their audience, right? I mean, whereas they're actually defining if there's at least a space for any plant to grow, or if it would just die. And I was also surprised about the lack of fantasy about methods and strategies how to engage new audiences for new pieces. I would think that leading an institution for opera would mean that and permanently think about who could be interested in the newest of the art form you're representing. But this seems to be an entirely new thought for them. And I should also have known better. I was still surprised about the lack of knowledge on both sides about the latest aesthetic developments. It's not just acceptable that someone like Moritz Eggert, who happens to be one of the most accomplished opera composers of his generation in Europe, hardly has any reception in the United States, or Wolfgang Riem or Lucia Ronchetti. And I mean, also, it's just not acceptable that Janine Tesori has to be introduced to the European colleagues. If the artists don't tear down national borders, no one will.
Hello, my name is Diana Syrse. I am a composer and singer. I have worked with opera, especially in opera and innovation, for a long time, for more than 20 years. I was working in theaters, and I come originally from Mexico. I'm living in Paris. At this dialogue, I had the opportunity to meet composers, librettists, scholars, musicologists, producers from very different backgrounds. And I think what surprised me the most was how honest people spoke about power, precarity, uncertainty, the future of opera, what are the challenges that we are all facing around the world, and to think critically, but also in a positive way about solutions of how, as a new generation, we have also the responsibility of thinking about how to expand this the opera creation and the tradition, that it's actually something that can transform lives in the long run, and it has been transforming lives in many parts of the world. Still, there are a lot of things that should be talked and negotiated in order to improve the systems and help the artists to keep creating, and there are many things that are still need to be done, but I am positive that these kind of dialogues are so special because we are not only talking about having a local impact or a local collaboration, but really an international impact and reflecting about what we do, about the structures that we serve and why we create and for whom we are creating. And we are questioning, listening to others, listening also to the work of other composers as well, to see also the things that they have done in different parts of the world is also inspiring, not only for us artists, but I think also for musicologists, for all the people, the students at Yale as well, that were attending these dialogues, and they're looking into the system itself when you gather people from different disciplines that are part of the structure. I really appreciated the fact of being able to listen to all the different themes that were put on the table, and also to share my perspective, in my case as a non-Western artist in a Western world, trying to do opera, which is a genre that is something that could transform lives in the long run, not only at the opera houses, but in the entire world. This is my the way I'm being positive about it, and I have seen it and I have lived it, and I know that it is something that goes beyond music or aesthetics or even money.
Composer Kevin Putz, who will be familiar to our American audiences. Of course, the Pulitzer Prize and Grammy-winning composer has established himself as one of America's leading composers, gaining international acclaim for his plush, propulsive music and works at the Met, Opera Philadelphia, and Minnesota Opera.
As far as who calls the shots in contemporary opera, who makes the decisions about programming and commissioning, I'm not sure we came to any definitive conclusions, although it was clear that the situation in Europe is very different from the situation in the United States. In the United States, composers can be commissioned because an artist or the administrators of an arts organization simply want to commission the composer because they believe in the composer. And as long as they have the support of their boards, and perhaps there's some track record of success in the field. In other words, people might come to see the opera. They might be able to sell tickets. They will commission and program new work. In Europe, it seems quite different since much of the funding is government funding. And what gets written about the piece in terms of criticism seems like it carries a lot of weight in Europe too, where I think that kind of exposure has diminishing importance in the United States. I think it was special to meet people who work in our industry and who write about work in our industry, whose interests are simply very different from mine. My music tends to be thought of as accessible and rather conservative. Most of the people I met are much more interested in the avant-garde and music sort of pushing the boundaries of what of tradition. And I guess what I found is that there isn't that much of a gulf separating us. That there is much more kind of similarity stylistically than I realized. And I think it's really important for us all to kind of feel like we're on the same team, and to meet people who you think are doing things that are vastly different from yours and who will never understand what you're doing, and for us all to just confront each other's work and find a mutual respect for one another.
Hi, Mark Campbell here. I'm a librettist and a mentor, and I live in New York and on Fire Island. My view of contemporary opera outside the U.S. is rather limited to the bigger hits, like Innocence or Festin, operas that eventually find their way to our shores. However, I can say that I envy other countries' greater freedom in artistic expression and the exploration of darker subject matter. NOD didn't change that view, but did reveal that many foreign colleagues praised the U.S. for not having to rely on the government to commission new opera, and our knack for producing work with commercial viability, along with the diversity of composers and librettists who create the new work here.
Olaf Roth, who since the 23-24 season has been a dramaturg at the Bavarian State Opera, and Olaf has also appeared as a lecturer at several German universities and colleges, and as a nonfiction author. He currently teaches at the Bavarian Theatre Academy.
Who's calling the shots? Well, difficult to tell. I guess in Germany it's the audience with their tax money. But they trust us theater people and they like to get in contact with us. So we can, to a certain extent, show them new pieces and styles, and they seem to accept that. But we are dependent on politicians who are not always really familiar with what we do. And I'd like to add, in times like these, like ours, in which democracy and its values are in danger, the role of the artist is more important than ever. Opera is an art form where people gather and discuss their values and issues, helps strengthen democratic structures, I'd say. I especially liked the informal character of the meetings, the familiar atmosphere. You could openly talk and really start a dialogue. So I think it was very amazing. First, you think you don't have much in common, but then you find out that we basically all want the same, to make opera flourish and spread it around the globe as a deeply humane form of art. I'd say American opera has visibility in Europe. There's still different approaches, I guess, but they're dwindling. I admire the quality not only of the music, but also of the libretti of contemporary American opera. And I must say, I quite admire what is going on opera-wise in the US right now. I didn't know there were so many smaller companies all doing interesting opera productions. So, yeah, I'd say my view has changed.
And lastly, you'll hear from Elena Langer, who is a prolific composer of colorful, dramatic, and often humorous music, which is familiar to audiences across Europe and America through her operatic vocal and orchestral pieces. In fact, Elena's 2016 hit for Welsh National Opera, called Figaro Gets a Divorce, receives a new production at the Royal Swedish Opera in Stockholm in 2026.
I had fantastic discussions with Moritz Eggert, and I was surprised by his humor in his music. We even started making plans of probably developing a double bill of comic operas. Besides Moritz, I also spoke with Jean Hostage, the choreographer, and I was surprised by his street show ideas. And also it sounded like a good platform for collaboration. I had interesting conversations with Eva Ruczynska about the situation in the new opera scene in Poland. My opera was performed in Poland. Figaro Gets a Divorce was performed in Poznań. So it was interesting for me to discuss what's new there. It was fun to know people in common, and yes, it was quite fruitful. I'm happy I met interesting and deep people, and it was never a small talk. It was always meaningful. The opera dialogues were completely different from any opera conference I have attended in the past. What I especially liked about New Opera Dialogues is that we were talking about the actual stuff. We were talking about the making it, the music, like details of music and staging, and I like that because we didn't discuss things around it, which sometimes can be irrelevant. We were talking actually about making opera.
NOD6 was a success. There's going to be a new one. And as we wrap up our time together, what's the plan for NOD7?
NOD7 does not have a title yet, but it does have a topic and a location. It's going to be in London next December, and it's going to be focused on process and really inviting opera houses to engage with other kinds of institutions, ranging from video game development to research. There are so many different kinds of institutions like universities, tech startups, who are innovative and perhaps more up-to-date models for how we can best support the development of new work and also accommodate failure or maybe, stopping a project better than the opera houses, which are mainly concerned with their bottom line and concerned with what's on stage tomorrow and what's on stage, what's in the rehearsal room right now. So yeah, we're going to, I think, bring a bunch of different kinds of people into the room and hopefully shake things up and get people thinking about some new ideas for how we can make new work and make better new work.
Folks, you have a year to get excited about NOD7. In the meantime, you can learn more. NewOperaDialogues.com is the website. Super grateful to all of the attendees who got their voices heard on this episode, as course, as thanks to Hauke Berheide and Amy Stebbins. Thanks so much to you.
Thank you so much to George Cedarquist, our grandfather, biologically speaking, and to New Opera Dialogues, everyone in that list. Just an incredible list of artists and creatives. I'll just run off the names for individual thank yous. Thanks to Amy Stebbins, Hauke Berheide, Diana Syrse, Kevin Putz, Mark Campbell, Olaf Roth, and Elena Langer. Thank you to everyone. Talking about sort of what I've been calling amongst my friends. This is sort of the United Nations of opera all coming together to figure out the path forward. But you know what? It's time to talk about the year in review.
Chalk Talk on Opera Box Score.
I love when the podcast I listen to, do their best of, and I think we should also be a podcast that does best of. I think we did this last year, so this is, I think, our second stab at this, and we have 4 categories. And first category for best of the year is favorite performance by an artist. So there might be a favorite performance like overall that you saw, and we could talk about like that in the next prompt. But who would like to kick us off with the favorite performance that they saw in 2025?
Well, I can start us off because I feel like I might have to steal this one from under Matt Cummings' nose. My favorite performance of 2025 was Sandra Radvanovsky in Medea at Lyric Opera of Chicago. I mean, we talked about it somewhat extensively when we first saw it, and Medea is, as an opera, you can see why it isn't performed all that often. But Sandra Radvanovsky owned that role to a degree I have not seen in a long time. She's just an exciting person to watch sing. She's got a big voice. She is willing to throw herself into whatever she needs to do or what the director wants her to do, which in this case was crawl all over the stage while being louder than the next 20 people combined. And that's what I love in opera, is people crawling and yelling really loudly.
I will happily pivot from my bae, who may also appear later in my list, to talk about 2 of my favorite performances that I had the chance to witness this year. Number 1, to keep it in hometown and opera themed, I was truly blown away by the performance of Sukjong Bak in Cavalleria Rusticana. Yeah, I thought the just like from the beginning of that first aria from behind the scrim of that conjured up the trees and hillsides of Sicily. It had so much power and so much warmth, and really that urgency that you need to drive those, kind of like turn of the century pot boilers into successful drama. Like, it kind of lives and dies in whether or not you believe all the passion that is like in what can otherwise come out as sort of overwrought music. And so I thought that he did such an excellent job and absolutely like knocked it out of the park in his lyric opera debut, hoping to see more from him here. To broaden out my aperture a little bit, to talk both about a female voice and some concert work, I had the pleasure of hearing Amanda Forsyth as the soprano soloist in the New York Phil's Messiah this week, and her tone is absolutely luminous. She makes that music sound so easy. It is not. Her ornaments were tasteful and exciting, and it was just she was born to sing. The Handel, just 10 out of 10, absolutely stellar performance.
Well, I'm going to divide mine up because I love everybody and it's hard for me to choose. I'm going to divide my favorite performance into centuries, and I'll start with the 17th century soprano Hannah de Priest sang Dido. For me, I actually directed her.
Maybe a little bit of nepotism there. Who knows?
She was so good. And I have to say that my choice as for Dido, Hannah, she has proven already this year so many times that she should be starring in all the Baroque operas. She just did the Banff Thanksgiving weekend opera and got great rave reviews for it. Moving on to early 18th century, Amanda Forsyth, who sang the Telemann Eno cantata at Boston Early Music Festival, stopped the show with the triumph aria of Eno. Moving on to the 19th century, a tie between Vida Minkiewicz in, I think, her American debut as Sieglinde at Santa Fe Opera. What's the name of that aria that comes in the final scene? I mean, the final act. O Herz ist like something where she's like holding the broken piece of the sword.
O Herz des Wunder.
There you go. Yeah. That, I mean, she sounded amazing through the whole thing, but when she got to that point, I think everybody in the audience just like was stuck in their seats, like looking, just like, where did that noise come from? Such a gorgeous voice, but so like edgy and just the right amount of like metal in the tone to cut through everything. And I have to say, on the other end of the singing spectrum, Jack Swanson singing his Met debut in his signature role, Count Almaviva, Barbara Seville, in the Bartlett Chair production. I don't know if you've seen this production, but they build that extra like lip or like ramp, I forget what you call that, that jets out into the audience. And he sings like, you know, the duet with Figaro and his aria from some of that the extra stage. So like really, really close to the audience, singing that crazy coloratura and high notes for days. 20th century opera goes to Joelle Harvey singing And True Love in Des Moines Opera's Rake's Progress. Everything you want in an And True Love. You know, the kind of virginal naivete, beautiful tone, tenderness, and then in the end, heartbreak in the lullaby. And for 21st century, it's going to be a tie between Nicole Heaston making her delayed Chicago debut in lyric opera's The Listeners. Lots of close-ups in that production, lots of video work. So she had to do a lot of face acting in addition to the singing. And Kyle Kettleson, who reprised his role as, I think, Howard in The Hours, another very tender, heartbreaking role, which if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, he commits suicide. And every time, I mean, I've seen the HD and now seen it live, like it's just truly, truly heartbreaking. So there's my best performance by artists, plural.
Slide that plural right in there.
Yeah. Weirdly, not Kyle Kettleson in The Listeners, where he was singing opposite Nicole Heaston.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, Kyle Kettleson's on my list all the time. Okay, do we have a favorite production? I guess, Weston, you already talked about your favorite production.
Well, I mean, that was my favorite performance. My favorite production, we mentioned before we started recording how it was kind of hard to find. There were a lot of like good performances throughout the year, but not many productions that stood out. So I'm actually going to pick an unstaged opera production as my favorite for the year. This was at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. The Bluebeard's Castle, conducted by Esa-Pekka Salonen, and Christian Van Horn was Bluebeard, and Judith was Ekaterina Gubanova. And, that's an opera that is almost never done fully produced, sadly. So I will, allow it in the opera production. What I think made it sort of go beyond that ordinary concert performances, they did do different lighting for each different room, which is always a fun trick. They brought in the extra brass section, huge trombone section right behind me where I was sitting to really blast my eardrums, which again is what I like in an opera. And there was just, it is one of my favorite operas of all time. I will sometimes even call it my favorite opera of all time, despite my Stockhausen reputation. I just think it is such a perfect piece that's so hard to do because of its various idiosyncrasies. But the music is, I think, very singable. The production is glorious, and it was something that I've wanted to see live ever since a strike several years ago derailed Bluebeard initially, I think back in like 2017 or something. And I wasn't able to see it. So they brought it back in 2025, and it was worth the wait for me.
I will definitely not disagree with what Weston said earlier about the fact that Cherubini's Medea is a challenging opera to produce. There are some really incredible moments, especially like the last 30 minutes of it. But it's definitely a product of its time, and it doesn't move in the way that both earlier and later masters would manage to do that. But I was really impressed with what David McVicker's production of Medea was able to conjure up in terms of stagecraft. I thought a lot of the visuals were really stunning, especially the grand finale at the end when she burns down the temple with herself inside of it. And this gives me a backdoor to talk about the performances, not just from my absolute bae, Sandra Radvanovsky, but the stalwart and ardent tenor of Matthew Polenzani in the role of Jason, that really needs to counterbalance the role of Medea, or else the opera is just not going to hit at all. And the really excellent work from everyone on stage in terms of making a subpar opera work really carried the production through to over the finish line.
I want to say that I talked about it when I had just seen it, but that's Klaus Gut Salome at the Met, which was also available as an HD experience. I just thought that it had a very clear concept, and it was executed to the director's, I think, what he envisioned. Even though you might have arguments about the interpretation or arguments about how graphic it was shocking, upsetting, beautiful, and impressive. All the things that opera should be, it achieved. And the stagecraft was just top notch. It really did impress me as a production. We're moving on now to favorite recordings of the year.
My favorite is, of course, going to be Lady Macbeth of the Mitsensk district.
God, we keep talking about that.
I keep talking about it. No, this is so true. So recently we had the Apple Wrapped, whatever the Spotify Wrapped equivalent for Apple Music, and I was looking
Apple Peeled,
and it's not 100% accurate because I do listen to a lot of stuff that is only available on CDs that I had to pay exorbitant amounts of money to ship to me from Poland. Shout out to the works of Nikolai Obukov, which were my true number one Wrapped this year. But my number one and number two recordings that I listened to according to Apple were the Lady Macbeth of Mitsensk district recording from Boston Symphony Orchestra, and that exact same recording, but within the larger recording of all of the Shostakovich symphonies and various stage works, which included also that opera. So it was doing a lot of heavy lifting for me this year. This is a sort of a completion of a cycle, as I said, of the symphonies, various orchestral works that they've been working on for a while. They've been releasing them piecemeal, and Lady Macbeth was sort of the final piece in that cycle. And let me tell you, it is an electric performance. The Boston Symphony has not sounded this good ever, as far as I'm concerned. Andris Nelsons is the conductor. The cast includes Christina Apolais, Brendan Gunnell, Gunter Greusbeck, and it's a great performance. It is as intense as you want it to be. The performances are really solid. They're live recordings, but we've also mastered in 2025 the art of recording something live without getting the audience noise, which I'm told from various reviews was an issue sometimes, particularly in the more sexual scenes where it was kind of awkward and there were some laughs here and there.
Some hooting and hollering.
But that does not come through in the audio recording. It sounds great. It's incredibly well mastered. It's frankly a crime that is not on the Grammy nominations list because it's my best of 2025.
I'm going to actually co-sign on the Percival Dido and Aeneas with Joyce DiDonato. I never would have thought that would be something I would want in my life. But the band is Il Pomodoro with Maxim Emelianichev conducting. The cast is stacked. Fatma Saeed as Belinda, future friend of the show, Hugh Cutting as the Spirit, the beautiful Lawrence Kilsby as a sailor, friend of the show, Michael Spires as Aeneas. The chorus is Italian, so sometimes their diction's a little bit funny, but it's a super stylish recording, and I kind of love it. So if you haven't heard it yet, it came out in August.
I can't believe that I'm saying this, that these words are coming out of my mouth and not out of Weston's. But my favorite opera recording of the year was absolutely the new the new Edward Gardner set of The Flying Dutchman with friend of the show Lise Davidson, just crushing it as Zenta. This is not really a favorite opera for me, but I was pretty much won over, and I'm going to have to listen to it more.
Legitimately shocked that Flying Dutchman is your top of list, Matt. Like,
Impressive.
I mean, the people know you from listening to the show, but off of mic, you are a certified Hollander hater, as we call him in the biz. So that's really impressive.
And you know what? I'm going to kick it off into our final category of the best of this year to give that huge achievement to friend of the show, Lisa Davidson, for making me a Dutchman lover.
There you go.
I heard it. We're not doing phrasing anymore.
Matt Cummings, Dutchman lover. My favorite achievement by a friend of the show, maybe not so much the conventional, performance. All of our friends of our show, like I look at the list of our friends of show and I'm bowled over all the time. I'm like, wow, these are legends by now that we have, I'm not going to say we gave them that position.
Yeah, we
but,
did.
Maybe we did.
We discovered them.
We discovered them. One of the people we discovered was Anthony Roth Costanzo. My favorite achievement was Anthony Roth Costanzo's, tenure at Opera Philadelphia. His Pay What You Can model has now survived 2 seasons, and it is beginning to be picked up by other companies as well. I believe it's Opera Colorado, I think, that is also
Sounds
trying
right.
it, and other companies are dipping their toes into the Pay What You Can model, which is truly one of the most important things to me, talking about affordability for opera, what gets people to see it, what gets people to come again and again. And it seems like it might be paying off. We're still in the experimental phase, but, it didn't crash and burn after season 1. And we know that they achieved full audience attendance for at least the first season. I think the second season is going to hit that too. So I think that's a major achievement that has ripple effects all over the industry, at least in the U.S. And I'm really excited to see where it goes.
I'm going to, of course, I wouldn't be me unless I took the opportunity to talk about Hugh Montague Rendell.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah, who personally had a tragic year with the death of his father, David Rendell, but managed to still really achieve so much in his career. I'm just blown away that he was able to continue singing at the Glyndebourne production of Marriage of Figaro as the Count. I believe that was right around the time his father passed away. And then he was able to bring that, Glyndebourne brought that production to the BBC Prom, so it was seen by probably the largest audience that can see an opera in one space. His album Contemplation garnered lots of critical reviews and was awarded the Gramophone Classical Music Award. And I think he also was nominated for some Oper, that German magazine award. And yeah, he made house debuts at Gran Teatro del Liceo. I think he sang Pelléas at Opera Monte Carlo. He's been singing Papageno and the Count everywhere. Just incredible, the trajectory of his career. I'm so glad that we met him when we did, so that we can always be available to talk to him through Instagram. I think he's closed his DMs by now. But I just love him, and I'm just so excited that he's been our guest, and that he is our friend, And I'm personally very excited to see how far he can take this career.
I'm going to go ahead and round us out here with the favorite achievement by the friend of the show. But I'm first going to start with talking about how much I like this panel and all of our positions and roles that we have. Oliver with breaking down his nominations by century, not of the actual work, but of the opera itself. Leave it to Weston to talk about Shostakovich and anything above that on the weird scale. Leave it to Matt to do the Sandra Radvanovsky standing. Leave it to me to crack jokes, talk sports, and misunderstand the assignment, because when I first saw this, I thought we were supposed to pick one category. So that's what I did, is I picked one category. So I have one thing to talk about, which is my favorite achievement by a friend of the show this year. And that is all of the accomplishments of the darling Miss Creatine Price, also known as Jordan Pitts. Now, look, as we've heard over the last couple of moments, there was a lot of good stuff in the opera world in 2025. I don't know if you heard about the rest of 2025. Wasn't that great? So it's been really nice to see a celebration of all of these things. It's really, really, really been nice to take a moment to see how awesome the year of 2025 has been for Miss Creatine Price. Like, let's start with how I got to know her first, which was the first run of Drag Messiah that happened at the end of 2024. That is also when she went on to France's Got Talent and was a finalist right in the beginning of the year of 2025. We interviewed her and Jordan Pitts right then in January, just as that stuff was coming to air. And then her persona just continued to rise and become more prominent. She has gone on to perform just this year. I was pulling this list and it is in no way complete, but it's still extensive. Creatine has performed with Musical Le Mans Festival, BBC Concert Orchestra, Death of Classical, Stonewall Inn, 54 Below, Opera de Wallonie, Wallonie, and was featured in Classical Singer magazine, France's Gala magazine, Huffington Post just last week, and oh yes, the Wall Street Journal. And then capped it all off with another very, very successful, I think sold out run of Drag Messiah. Meanwhile, Jordan got to do some singing of his own out of drag. He did Mozart Requiem and Canyon Pagliacci with Buffalo Philharmonic, did a recital with Sun Valley Opera, was a tenor soloist with Boston Early Music Festival. That's one for Oliver. Carmina Burana with West New York Chamber Orchestra, and Loncovallo and Pagliacci with Buffalo Opera Unlimited. So they've had a year. Creatine has had a year. Jordan has had a year. And here's what I love about all of this. So I am so delighted that folks are getting to know and embrace Creatine. She is fabulous. She's fun. She's gorgeous. She's blonde. And she's doing the thing that she said she wanted to do when she went on to France's Got Talent, and that is democratize opera. What she's doing is she's allowing some people that may not have felt seen in our art form before, whether it's because of their background, their presentation in the world, whatever it is, these people may not have felt seen in our spaces, and hopefully Creatine has helped them to feel that way. However, the voice that powers everything that Creatine is Jordan Weatherston Pitts. And that is, Jordan's getting to sing as Creatine, but he's also getting to sing as himself, and he's working and he's getting gigs. And I think that is what is so wonderful for me about this year for Jordan and for Creatine, is that their stars are both starting to rise. I think the world of opera deserves to hear more from both of them, and I am hopeful that we do in 2026. I also want to pay particular attention to this fantastic article that just came out in the Huffington Post. Sam Lee wrote it. The title of it is "This Centuries-Old Sacred Music Got a Drag Glow Up." Basically, it's a recounting of Sam Lee's experience with going to see the Drag Messiah, and the fact that it's this piece of sacred music that is getting this unconventional turn when you think about the way that people outside of classical music often come to classical music and its stereotypes, and just to see and read about Sam's, experience at this is really, really fantastic. So I encourage you to check out that Huffington Post article. But yes, 2025 was the year of Creatine, and I'm here for it in 26.
You can find a link to that Huffington Post article at operaboxscore.com. We'll see what next year brings, but if you want to find out, you better make sure you subscribe to our podcast. On Spotify, click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. Find a friend, tell them about the show, and force them to listen until they like it too. It's time for the 2-minute drill.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
The New York Times has published its Best Classical Performances of 2025 list.
The inferior list.
Friends of the show who are name-checked include Anthony Roth Costanzo and Yuval Sharon for Comet Popea at Lincoln Center, Huang Rose the Monkey King at San Francisco Opera, Barbara Hannigan and John Zorn's Eumalatret at Park Avenue Armory, John Brancy at the Prototype Festival, and Aaron Morley in the current production of Daughter of the Regiment at the Met. Find a link to the full list on the webpage for this episode at operaboxscore.com.
Christine Goerke and Jeremy Zeltzer have launched Audition Air, a project aimed at providing emerging performing artists with equitable access to professional auditions by subsidizing air travel across the contiguous United States. For the inaugural season, Audition Air partnered with the Florida Grand Opera Studio Artist Program. For 26-27, grantees will be selected from a wider applicant pool, and those applications will open in May.
Argentine tenor Jose Cura is taking a stand against modern music distribution methods, stating that, quote, "The 9th of December 2025 marks the end of my distribution contract with the company Altafonte, which for years has been responsible for inserting my recordings into the various digital providers such as Spotify, Amazon, iTunes Music, and others." Cura went on to say that anyone who had purchased his albums would still have access, but his personal catalog would no longer be available to stream. Given the current state of the music sales industry and the level of saturation on the internet where materials of great value coexist alongside content of no relevance, I will take time to decide when and how I will once again make my products available to the public.
In major awards news, War Crimes version, Ildar Abdrazakov has been named the People's Artist of Russia. That is the highest honor for a Russian musician. The Putin supporter shared the news on social media with a picture of himself and the Russian Federation president. Abdrazakov expressed gratitude for the award and his dedication to music. Since endorsing Putin, Abdrazakov has held roles such as the general director of the Sevastopol State Opera and Ballet and become a member of Russia's Presidential Council. He has been banned from performing in most of the West, but has appeared in Japan and at the Ravenna Festival.
On the disabled list, conductor Asher Fish has been forced to withdraw from the Tiroler Festspiele due to a shoulder injury. He'll be replaced by 4 different conductors, including Sesto Quattrini, who will lead their main stage production of Lucia di Lammermoor.
La Scala's second performance of Shostakovich's Lady Macbeth of Macbeth had to be cut short as Maestro Riccardo Chailly fell ill halfway through the opera. After a brief hospitalization, the company initially announced that Chailly's podium time would be suspended, but Chailly was back on that podium by December 13th. Can't keep a good conductor down.
Exit stage right, Romanian soprano Anda Louise Bogza has passed away at age 60. She began her career at the Romanian State Opera and the National Theatre in Prague, and continued on to roles at the Vienna State Opera, Berlin State Opera, Deutsche Oper Berlin, Salzburg Festival, and Maggio Musicale Fiorentino, as well as many more. Her signature roles included the Trovatore Leonora and Rusalka.
German baritone Thomas Johannes Meyer's death was announced by the Bayreuth Festival. Quote, "As an internationally sought-after artist, Meyer performed at leading opera houses, including the Vienna Staatsoper, Bavarian State Opera, Hamburg State Opera, La Scala in Milan, and the Royal Opera House Covent Garden. In Bayreuth, he captivated audiences in central Wagnerian roles. Telramund, Holländer, The Wanderer, and Amfortas were brought to life by his powerful voice, precise expression, and profound empathy."
Mary Deisler, former CEO of Boston's Handel and Haydn Society, has passed away after battling brain cancer. She was 69. Deisler mentored many young arts professionals and was involved with organizations like the League of American Orchestras and Chorus America. Following her nearly 25-year tenure at H&H, she served as president and CEO of the Charlotte Symphony and co-executive director of the Boston Landmarks Orchestra, raising over $300 million in the not-for-profit performing arts sectors over her 40-year career.
And on this day, December 16th, a few premieres. 1771 brought us the first performance of André Grétry's Zemir Tazor in Paris. Also in Paris in 1835 was the first performance of Fromental Alevi's Leclerc. 1894 brought us the first performance of Emil von Reznicek's Donna Diana in Prague. And in 1923, it was the first performance of Siegfried Wagner's Der Schmied von Marienburg in Rostock. Siegfried is the first son of Richard and the grandson of Liszt.
Some births on this day. In 1770, we commemorate the probable birth date of German composer Ludwig van Beethoven in Bonn. He was baptized on the 17th and would have needed to have been born before that. 1775 saw the birth of the French opera composer François-Adrien Boieldieu. He was born in Rouen. French composer Auguste Olmes was born in Paris in 1847. Hungarian composer, music critic, and folk song collector Zoltán Kodály was born in 1882 in Kecskemét. 1913 saw the birth of tenor Heinz Sauerbaum in Rauschen. He sang in the premiere of Pallas Athena weint by Krjanek. 1926 saw the birth of American tenor James McCracken in Gary, Indiana. The city so nice, they sang it thrice. Canadian tenor Donald Groby was born in Ottawa in 1929. He created Wilhelm und junge Lot by Henze and sang in the premiere of the Gespenstersonata by Aribert Reimann. And finally, born on this day, English tenor Philip Langridge, 1939 in Kent.
And that is your 2-minute drill.
From fear and from necessity, at death, in sickness, or private loss, without the prick of fear, our conscience sleeps.
It's neither opera and it's neither Christmas, but it's a little bit of both. An excerpt from Benjamin Britten's St. Nicholas Cantata, sung by Philip Langridge, one of my favorites. I love that piece. I love the sound of Langridge's voice in song and in English music, and in Mozart for that matter. But Britten and Langridge go together like peas and carrots.
Absolutely my favorite Britten tenor for sure.
Yeah. We have a lot we don't have a lot to talk about, and we have had a long show. So quick hit on Jose Cura wanting to take his content down from the streaming platforms. Yeah, I get it, but it just means that people are not going to find you.
Yeah.
It's a shame. And there's this boycott Spotify thing. And I agree with the reasons to boycott Spotify. Unfortunately, in my line of work, I have to use Spotify. It doesn't have the same library as Apple Music does. I wish they had the same libraries, but they just don't. So unfortunately, I still have a Spotify account, and I was really mad about my Wrapped, because Spotify Wrapped thinks that I listen to ambient music all the time. It just so happens that Spotify creates playlists for insomniacs, and I listen to them.
Yeah.
And now it thinks I'm I don't care about anything else but ambient music.
What was your Spotify age?
52.
Wow. So close. Only off by 100 years.
Mine was 65.
Jose Cura will unfortunately not be participating in those insomnia playlists for Oliver in the future. I do respect the stance, but it is hard without organizing and having actual maybe artists outside of the classical music world standing up and taking a stand. If Taylor Swift wanted to take down Spotify, she probably could.
She could.
Let's talk about Audition Air. This is a neat idea. Ashley, I imagine you probably had to, pay quite a bit hopping from state to state, given your travels.
I did. And a young singer, Ashley, would like to ask my friend Christine if they will provide reimbursements from trips that were 15 years ago, because I would like to recoup a few $1,000s from all of the flights that I had to take all across the country to do auditions.
You know what? It can't hurt to ask.
We're pals. We talk hair products. Maybe she would do me a solid. I don't know. But no, seriously, I think this is a lovely idea. I don't know how on earth they're going to do the vetting for a wider pool. But I do love this idea. As more companies are just kind of holding their auditions in New York. If you're someone who's in Phoenix, that's real hard to do. Even if you're in Chicago, part of why I wanted to stay here was because I thought I'd be able to do a lot of auditions here, and I've done some here, but the amount of auditions I've had to go to New York or Los Angeles for, or had to, past tense, because that was a different part of my life, was wild. But I applaud Christine. I applaud Jeffrey Zeltzer. I'd like to see this program grow. We'll see.
Maybe they could throw a couple of bucks our way for some podcasters, too who want to go see the Santa Fe Opera or something. Just a suggestion. Let's wrap this show up.
Good call. Bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. That's how we end the show. I'm going to start with Oliver Camacho.
I just want to send out Christmas blessings, a good call to the people who make well-noted scores for pro choristers. If there's lots of markings, if there's cuts, if there's unusual solo versus ripiano like moments, and you are preparing a score and you're photocopying it and sharing it with the chorus, you are doing God's work. Thank you so much. Matt Cummings.
I have to say, while I was in New York recently, I got a chance to go see the Broadway revival of Ragtime, and I think it's closing in January, so there's not a lot of time left by the time this episode comes out, but if you have the opportunity, you should absolutely go, if for no other reason than to see my husband, Joshua Henry, who was so phenomenal that he got multiple ovations, not even just during acts, but like in the middle of songs. He sounds like $1,000,000. He's insanely charismatic and just like really, really giving a 10 out of 5 performance as Colehouse Walker.
Ashley Hardgrave.
So I would like to recommend to everybody, not just in Chicago, but nationwide, there's a really awesome show that happens on our public television station here, WTTW. It's something called Chicago Works. It's a feature that Jeffrey Bayer, who's a host here, does. And there's an entire special that's up on their website now where he goes to different people in Chicago with interesting jobs. And one of the chunks right in the middle of this most recent special is a feature on Lyric Opera of Chicago, where he talks to the wig makers, he talks to the prop master, and then he talks a little bit with friend of the show, Enrique Mazzola, and actually gets a conducting basics lesson from him. The whole special is very interesting just to see sort of how the inner workings of a city happen and just talking to some of the people that make it go. But I also really love that WTTW stuck the lyric right in the middle. It's a great little piece. I think they start around like the 29 minute mark, but I encourage you to check out the whole thing.
That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Get your voice heard and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. That's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is me. The executive producer of the OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-hosts, Matt Cummings and Ashley Hardgrave, with guests Amy Stebbins, Hauke Berheide, Diana Syrse, Kevin Putz, Mark Campbell, Olaf Roth, and Elena Langer, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you coexist alongside content of no relevance. We're back with an all-new show next week when we revisit some of our favorite holiday segments, a best-of episode that will drop on Christmas Day. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more peeled apples. Join us.